Alright everybody, welcome back to this video, to this channel. This is Alex from Dream English. If you haven't met me, I'm here to help you pass your PTE exam once and for all. Whether you're in Australia, New Zealand, or overseas, or even studying online, I can promise you this video will help you pass your exam much easier compared to what you knew before. Today, we're going to attempt the full PTE mock test once again, and our goal is going to be to score 90, 90, 90, 90. Now, by popular demand, one of our previous videos got more than 50,000 views, and many of you have been asking for version 2. And in the previous mock test, we were going through some technical difficulties throughout the mock test and my computer was getting stuck. I couldn't type properly. So many of you were living it through me. I know that there were some very funny comments and maybe our editor can put it on the screen, but some of you were just as stressed going through it as I was in the moment trying to make it work. And I've gotten some amazing comments as well that some of the students have only watched the video and they've practiced on our website and on our platform and they're able to score 80 plus. I think there was one student who scored 81 overall in like a couple of days, just by watching the first video and by going through the questions and the mock test on our website. I'm actually going to take you through what's going through my mind, what I would be telling my students in that situation, how you have to deal with certain situations, how you have to approach the questions, when to click next. I've just spent another 59 Australian dollars on a new mock test, so all the questions here are going to be new to me. I cannot guarantee that I will score 90, 90, 90, 90, but I will do my best. Now, one other thing that throughout this whole experience, and I recommend that definitely pause the video right now because the most value you can get out of it is if you actually practice along with me. So I definitely recommend that you grab a notebook, you grab a pen and paper, and in my situation, I grabbed a nice hot cup of tea. So I recommend you get cozy, dive in, wear a comfy sweater, pull up your notebook, and let's do this together. I'll see you on the other side. Let's begin. I wasn't able to keep my promise. Actually, I wasn't able to keep two promises. All right. So here we are on the official PTE website. Let's do this. I've already done the purchase of the second mock test. So you can see this was the previous version that we did here. Spoiler, we got 65 in writing. Now let's start with the second one and we'll try to get 90, 90, 90, 90. So version 2, fingers crossed, no technical difficulties this time. So if you haven't grabbed your notebook already, or if you haven't prepared a tea or gotten cozy, this is your last chance as we're about to embark on this journey together. So let's have a look. Whenever you're ready, click start. Let me move this to the side. Let's go. All right, checklist, use pen and paper, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Next. Make sure you allowed the mic to be on. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm here to score 90. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm here to score 90. All right, this is working. Let's continue. So as always, we got speaking, writing, reading, and listening. Let's begin. We have the sequence of questions. All right, so read the prompt below in 25 seconds. You have 30 seconds. All right, cool. And by the way, guys, this section is not actually mandatory in the real exam. I've talked about it probably in the previous videos, but anyways, just for them to have your voice sample. Hey, my name is Alex. I'm living in Australia and I love it here, and I decided to take this English test in order to assess myself, see how my English level is, and potentially upskill myself at my workplace. I heard that Pearson provides the results very fast, so that's why I decided to take this exam. Thank you very much. Don't give them any details about your immigration, permanent residence. This section is not scored, so it's only there for them to have your voice sample, that if you go for another test, they know that this is you who's giving the exam and not somebody else. Just like with your banking application, you have the voice verification often. Same thing here. All right, and we got to read aloud. So for read aloud, as you recall, it doesn't give you points in reading anymore, just speaking. So the number one thing to focus on is your oral fluency. The purpose of the informative speech is to provide interesting, useful, and unique information to your audience. By dedicating yourself to the goals of providing information appealing to your audience, you can take a positive step towards succeeding in your efforts as an informative speaker. So the second part is a little bit tricky. By dedicating yourself to the goals of providing information appealing to your audience, quick breath, you can take a positive step towards succeeding in your efforts as an informative speaker. The purpose of the informative speech is to provide interesting, useful, and unique information to your audience. By dedicating yourself to the goals of providing information and appealing to your audience, you can take a positive step towards succeeding in your efforts as an informative speaker. Not bad. Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on a clear dark night. So a bit of a tongue twister. Silent and jeweled with the constellation of ancient myth and legend, the night sky has inspired wonder throughout the ages, a wonder that leads our imaginations far from the confines of Earth and the peace of the present day. I'm running out of air, so I need to take a breath, and out into the distant reaches of space and cosmic time itself. So the problem that many of you are probably doing here, you try to maintain the same speed. I see that this text is harder, so I'm going to slow down 10% here compared to the previous one, but I'll try to maintain the same pace. Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on a clear dark night. Silent and jeweled with the constellations of ancient myth and legend, the night sky has inspired wonder throughout the ages. A wonder that leads our imaginations far from the confines of Earth and the pace of the present day, and out into the distant reaches of space and cosmic time itself. See, some parts were not great. I tried to maintain the fluency. I tried to maintain the flow instead of hesitating. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Long sentence. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. Okay, so the first sentence, we really need to pace ourselves, find where we're going to take a break. At 5:30, went to his study. And I recommend following with your finger. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple of hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. All right. There's every reason to believe that effective regulations are not merely a luxury that only the rich can afford. Quick breath. But an important foundation for a thriving private sector and economic growth. But the broad pattern of the past 5 years has been that the main reform efforts are taking place in rich countries. So first sentence, a little bit tricky. Need to pace myself, not get stuck. Fluency, speaking continuously is the number one most important thing here. If you make a mistake, don't stop, don't correct yourself, keep going. All right. There is every reason to believe that effective regulations are not merely a luxury that only the rich can afford, but an important foundation for a thriving private sector and economic growth. But the broad pattern for the past 5 years has been that the main reform efforts are taking place in rich countries. I made some mistakes. Instead of 4, I said from. I think maybe 2 little mistakes, not the end of the world. Just don't panic, don't stop, keep going. Business school admission officer said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their application pool by requiring several years work experience. Whoa, what a sentence. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectations of work experience. Okay, second one is easy. Of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their application pool. So I need to take a breath there as well. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their application pool by requiring several years of work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience. In the first sentence, I made a little mistake, but it's not the end of the world. And now we are on question 6, so I have to get ready and prepare for repeat sentences to come next. So I'm actually recording on a second phone here that you guys will be able to see my notes. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college's undergraduates are now women. When I went there, it was only the 3rd year that women had been admitted, and about 70% of students were male. I'm going to check my marker for repeat sentences to make sure it's working. Yeah, looks like it. All right. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college's undergraduates are now women. When I was there, it was only the 3rd year that women had been admitted, and about 70% of students were male. All right, repeat sentences as expected.
Please pass these handouts along to the rest of the people in your row.
Please pass these handouts to the rest of the people in your row. Always click next one down and make sure the recording started.
The first step was to establish a baseline of known distance.
The first step is to establish a baseline of first distance. I'm not sure if I messed up there.
Politicians make much better decisions when they listen to public opinion.
They listen to public opinion. Politicians make much better decisions when they listen to the public opinion. Not bad. And you see I wrote S and so on.
Please take these up to Mr. Mitchell in the chemistry lab.
These up to Mr. Mitchell. Please take these up to Mr. Mitchell in the chemistry lab.
The bus right out in front will take you to the station.
Right out in front. The bus right out in front will take you to the station. And you see, I'm not trying to copy their pauses or their accents.
The head of department isn't available till Thursday.
Department isn't available till Thursday. The head of department isn't available till Thursday.
39.5% of California residents do not speak English in the home.
Do not speak English in the home. 39.5% of California residents do not speak English in their home. That was pretty good. That was a tough one.
Children are not allowed in tutorial rooms at any time.
Not in tutorial rooms at any time. Children are not allowed in tutorial rooms at any time. And images are coming up soon.
There are many people in the USA who are critical of their voting system.
The USA are critical of their voting system. There are many people in the USA who are critical of their voting system.
Many environment experts are very concerned about the future of our planet.
Very concerned about the future of our planet. Many environment experts are very concerned about the future of our planet. This one is repeated. It's actually in our platform as well. All right, for describe images, we cannot use a typical template anymore. So there's going to be human interference. They're going to be checking this as well. What they're checking for is that you're not using some obvious format. So you got to make it a little bit different every time. You got to change it up. You got to improvise a little bit. We still recommend getting used to a structure, but then you start to modify it a little bit. So I'll cover this throughout the questions. The given image in front of me is a line graph, and it is providing lots of information about recent global monthly mean and CO2 emissions. On X and Y axis, I can see different informations like parts per million and years from 2004 to 2009. The first visible year in this image is the year 2004, which shows 376 approximately. However, in the middle part of this image, there's an increase from 376 to 382, and the situation looks different from the previous one. Lastly, there is a peak in 2008, which shows 384 parts per million approximately. In conclusion, this picture shows a continuous increase in parts per million of global carbon-2 emissions. And I want to always finish between 30 to 35 seconds. This is a very easy image. It's also on our platform. It's not very difficult, honestly, so it doesn't really matter what image you get. It's about how you practice. Note that in the previous image, I actually messed up. In the beginning, I said something that didn't make sense. It doesn't matter. Keep talking. Now, what I like to do and what I teach usually our students to follow is a sequence of events, but change the words every time. The given graph is a line graph, and it's providing a lot of information about gender pay gap in Scotland and UK from 1997 to 2005. In this graph, I can see a lot of different data like years from 1997 to 2005, Scotland's pay gap, UK's pay gap, and different percentages. The first year that I can see in this graph is the year 1997, which shows 17 and 18% approximately. However, in the middle part of the image, there is an obvious decrease, and it's going down to about 15 for both. Finally, the year 2005 is the last year in this graph, and it is providing 10% for Scotland and approximately 15% for UK. In conclusion, this image shows the Scotland gender pay gap. Again, my conclusion is wrong, but they're not actually checking for this logically. They just want to make sure that I'm using different information. Now, this graph is a little bit different, so I teach this in the class as well, how we do it. We can go 1, 2, 3. So we can describe this normally like a process with a set of different steps. And once again, sorry for that, this doesn't need to be logical. The graph in this image provides information about comparison of the fundamental needs model with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I can see two different sides, the left-hand side and the right-hand side. The first visible aspect in this picture is the status esteem needs and the stimulation needs, which are related to self-actualization needs and self-esteem needs. However, in the middle part of this graph, I can see different information which shows belonging needs, which include friends, family, and love. Finally, at the bottom of this graph, I can see various security needs, which demonstrate safety needs, physiological needs, like food, water, shelter, and so on. In conclusion, this picture provides information about the comparison between these two graphs. And I always try to click next before I reach 40 seconds. So try not to get cut off, but regardless, if you are silent for 3 seconds or more, anywhere in speaking, it will automatically go next by itself. So I prefer to click next by myself, because otherwise if I'm scratching my face or coughing, it's going to keep picking up the noise. All right, and after this, probably I'll have my retail lecture, so I need to get ready. The given image on the screen is a bar graph, and this bar graph has a title which is Journeys per Person per Year in Great Britain. I can see different numbers from 0 to 700. I can see different methods of transportation like walking, car, bus, and other models. And I can see different years from 1995 to 2006. The first visible factor on the left-hand side is walking, which shows 300 and 250 approximately. However, in the middle part of the image, we see a massive spike for car and then a huge draw for bus, coach, and rail. Finally, the very last visible factor in this graph is other models, which shows about 50 for each. Overall, this picture provides the journeys per person in Great Britain for different modes of transportation. And again, I click next before reaching 40 seconds. Another bar graphs are pretty easy. What you guys will notice is that I'm not repeating myself. I'm not saying the exact same thing, but I'm following type of graph, title, XY axis, first, second, third potential data point. Or you can pick any couple data points. The given graphic on my screen is a bar graph and is providing information about volunteers who incurred expenses and reimbursements available. On the X and Y axis, I can see different data like percentages from 0 to 40% and various methods like postage, phone calls, meals, training, etc. The first visible factor on the left-hand side in this image is postage, which represents approximately 40% of the total. However, in the middle part of this graph, we have phone calls, meals, training, travel costs, and uniform, which is slightly decreasing from left to right. Finally, the very last factor is other, which represents approximately 25%. Overall, this graph shows an interesting trend for volunteers who incurred expenses during their practice. Again, during their practice, like that doesn't make any sense. Nobody's really—
What has happened in Latin America as a result of globalization? Well, they have had now more than a decade of what is called reform. A decade of globalization. And throughout the continent, people are asking questions like, has reform failed us? Has globalization failed us? Because clearly things have not worked out the way they were told they ought to. Just to give you a picture, they were told that reform would lead to faster economic growth. After a decade, what are the numbers? In fact, recent growth is far slower than it was in the 50s, 60s and 70s before reform. That is not a very inspiring success story. Even in the beginning part of the 90s, growth was still below what it was in the 50s, 60s and 70s, but the growth it got in the beginning of the period was not sustainable, and it was not sustained. Throughout the region, poverty, as measured on the $2 a day standard as a percentage of the population, was actually up.
And we have 10 seconds to prepare, so again, you cannot use an old school format here anymore, so you have to change it up. The speaker gave a lecture and provided a lot of information about Latin America and the globalization rates. At the start of the conversation, the speaker talked about many different things, about how people are asking questions about why globalization has failed them. Additionally, the speaker provided additional context and mentioned about reforms that would lead to faster growth. However, in fact, it is now much slower compared to the previous years. Finally, the speaker also mentioned that in the 90s, growth was below and it was not sustainable. And finally, poverty today on $2 a day has increased compared to before, and it is up. In conclusion, this lecture provided a lot of information about the economic growth in Latin America. Not amazing, but should be good.
The most visible manifestation of this wealth was a series of grand projects that were begun by Napoleon III, mainly in Paris, soon after he came to power in the 1850s. He said I want to be a second Augustus, making reference to the Emperor Augustus's claim that he'd found Rome a city of brick and left it one of marble. In the case of Napoleon III, he found Paris in 1851 a city of cobblestones and twisting medieval streets, and he left it one of asphalt and macadam, because what he began doing was bulldozing old Paris, the ancient medieval part of Paris, and replacing it with wide new boulevards, 85 miles of them, that he lit with some 20,000 gas lamps, which he took out all the old 18th century oil lamps, replaced them with gas, which gave a much cleaner, brighter, regular light. Also 50,000 trees are planted alongside them, many of them the chestnut trees that we now think of as synonymous with Paris. And he drained the streets with 200 miles of sewers, these new famous Parisian sewers beneath the streets, thereby making the city a much more safer, pleasant place to wander, to stroll, to people watch, to have coffee or absinthe in the cafes.
So what you saw was probably knowing me speaking over the audio. I'll show you in a second why, but I want to catch 3-4 words at a time. The given lecture was about the topic about a series of grand projects in Paris. At the start of the conversation, the speaker talked about different things, about how Paris was largely founded by Napoleon III and he wanted to be the second Augustus. Additionally, the speaker also mentioned how he founded Paris with cobblestones that became bulldozing old Paris. In addition, the speaker also mentioned that he was replacing the streets with wide boulevards. He had oil lamps that were brighter and regular light. Additionally, he also mentioned about chestnuts, which are synonymous with Paris. And finally, he also talked about the new Parisian sewer and that it's a pleasant place to be, like in the cafes. Overall, this talked about what Napoleon did for the city of Paris. Again, you see a couple fumbles, but mostly we did okay. Now we have
agriculture refers to the production of food and goods through what activity?
The answer is farming.
What instrument allows you to see distant objects in space?
It's called a telescope.
How many years are there in a century?
There are 100 years.
What is used to turn off an electric light?
The answer is electricity or switch or light switch. You can say multiple variations, so that's fine. Hopefully.
How many years are in a decade?
There are 10 years. All right, then we have summarized group discussions.
A group of 3 students are talking about the film version of a book they've been studying.
So, what did everyone make of the film then? I absolutely loved her novel, but I've got to admit I was really disappointed by the film adaptation we saw in class. It didn't stay true to the book. The ending was different, it wasn't historically accurate, and the characters didn't really match my idea of who they were. Especially the lead.
Well, it's always going to be potentially controversial adapting a book to a film. You're never going to please everyone. I think you've got to take genres like this with an open mind. I can't think of any I've seen that are an exact copy. I thought the book worked on the big screen because it was less about the plot and more about the visuals.
Yeah, it can be hit and miss, can't it? I think it's all about choosing actors and costumes and sets that reflect when the story's set. And the director creating the right mood to bring out the best elements of the book. For me, it ticked all those boxes. I actually thought it was much better than the book.
And sometimes it works better when the scriptwriter goes off on a tangent and has a completely different take on a book, so that it's almost unrecognisable from the book. Like ones that are made into musicals. Then the film takes on, like, a life of its own.
But if it's a story I've already read, I want the adaptation to be recognisable at least. Or what's the point? You might as well do something original. Create something from scratch instead, don't you think?
Personally, I'd say anything goes as long as I think it works. And I intentionally avoid looking too much at reviews before seeing an adaptation, because the rating will be heavily influenced by how much the writer loved the book. I want to make up my own mind and decide for myself if I like the film.
Really? I do the opposite. I decide whether or not an adaptation might be worth watching, or any film for that matter, based on the overall rating from the film critics and members of the public. If it's not at least an 80% good rating, I don't bother. Unless we've been told to watch it because we're reading it in class.
Well, here's an idea. Next time, let's all go and watch a film adaptation first before seeing any reviews and see if our opinions match the ratings. I think it'll be interesting to see how much we agree with each other.
You're on. Well, there's that Jane Austen period drama about to be released, isn't there? What's it called? Let's go to see that.
All right, and we have 10 seconds to prepare, so it doesn't give a lot of time. As you can see, my notes look very complicated, but let's make the best of it. The main topic of this conversation between three speakers was about a film version of a book that they were reading in class. There are many different topics about whether they like the reviews, whether they like the original movie, or whether they prefer the adaptation. The first speaker talked about how she loved the novel, but she was disappointed that the film characters were not accurate. In addition, the second speaker added that the play was quite controversial and the book worked on big screen in his opinion. Additionally, the third speaker interjected, and she also added that it's all about the actors and costumes and about the set and setting that the author sets in the movie. She also mentioned about how they ticked all the boxes for her and it's better than the book in her opinion. Then the second speaker also mentioned that he found it completely unrecognizable from the book, however he enjoyed it anyways. And the third speaker also mentioned that she prefers the adaptation over the original book. Then the speakers also discussed how they're looking at the reviews in some cases, whereas other cases they prefer to start the movies. And the third speaker mentioned that she looked at book reviews and decides for herself if she wants to watch the movie or not. Additionally, the second speaker mentioned that for him the reviews are very important, and based on the overall rating he decides whether he wants to see the movie or not. In his opinion, at least 80% of the movie has to be ranked higher than 80% for him to watch the movie. Additionally, the first speaker also mentioned that she likes the idea of checking the reviews in some cases and not checking the reviews in other cases, but she proposed that the three speakers can go check out the movie first together before they actually go and read any reviews online. They all agreed with this idea. They thought that it was fantastic. And the third speaker actually suggested that there's a new Jane Austen drama that they can see together. Overall, this conversation was between three speakers about the adaptation of a movie based on a book that they read in class. All right, so next question. It starts playing right away.
Three members of staff are having a meeting about organising a conference in their department.
So, this is our first meeting to try and organise the department's annual conference, and I must say, I'm starting to feel a bit worried. I know I'm a worrier by nature, but there just seems to be so much still to be done. And it's only just over 2 weeks away now, isn't it?
Well, closer to 3 weeks, actually. Anyway, yes, there is quite a lot to do, but I don't think we need to start panicking just yet. The way I see it, the key thing is to be organised. So the first thing is to make a list and, prioritize. We've already booked the 2 lecture halls and recreation area, so that's a start.
Yes, so I guess the next thing is we need to work out the order of events and arrange who will give talks and lead the discussions. I've already talked to most of the possible speakers, and I'll confirm things with them. Then we can get going on writing the publicity material and getting it printed.
Thanks. That's already sounding more manageable. I wouldn't mind writing the publicity stuff. I think some posters and small leaflets will be enough, don't you? I know it's open to the public, but I imagine most participants will be from the department. So I reckon it'll be okay to do something on a laptop and just print it off ourselves. We don't need anything too flashy, do we?
No, probably not. But it'd be good to attract some people from outside, or at least from the rest of the college. On that subject, can I make a suggestion? How about getting in a main speaker, someone a bit more well-known in academic circles?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can see how that might attract more people, but the focus of the whole conference is the work of our department. Don't you think having a kind of star guest might draw attention away from that? And also maybe intimidate some of the other speakers who aren't so used to speaking in public.
Actually, I think it's a good idea. In fact, I can think of someone who could do it. She's written a couple of books that were well received, and she's a brilliant speaker, clever and funny. I used to work with her at another college, so I know her a bit. I could contact her if you like.
Well, okay. As long as it's a topic that falls within the general area, but doesn't clash directly with what others are discussing, it could certainly raise our profile and bring in more people. And there's no harm in asking, is there?
Okay, so I'll contact her tomorrow and see if she's free. Meanwhile, Jen, can you talk to the other speakers and discussion leaders and make a list of times and topics? If you can let me know that, I'll make a start on writing the leaflet. And we'd better schedule the next meeting, maybe for the beginning of next week.
All right. 8 seconds. Meeting about organizing conference in their department. So I normally like to have a structure for the start of a sentence and then freestyle. The main conversation between these 3 speakers revolved around the topic of meeting about an organizing conference in their department. The first speaker mentioned that he's starting to get worried because the conference is going to be only 2 weeks away. However, the second speaker corrected him and she mentioned that it's in fact 3 weeks away and they don't need to start panicking. The most important thing is for them to be organized. Additionally, she also mentioned that she's done a lot of preparation, such as booking the area. Then the third speaker added that there's a lot of news and she's talking about the order of the events, such as discussions between speakers and the public material that they were presenting to the audience. Then the first speaker also suggested that they could print out some leaflets, which would be enough, and additionally they can also provide additional information on the laptop and print it out. The second speaker agreed and that this is a good idea and she believed that this will attract a lot of people from the outside. Then the third speaker also mentioned that she's not sure about it because the main focus is for their department. The speakers also suggested that they could invite some all-star speaker which would help them raise the profile of the university. But once again, the third speaker was not sure about it. Then the second speaker mentioned that it's actually a good idea, especially if it's a known well speaker, because it would bring a lot more attention to them. The first speaker started saying that he will reach out to this potential individual to make sure that they're available, and they will also see if she's free to make the speech and inform all of the other members of the faculty about her. Overall, they decided to split up the tasks and do different things, where the first speaker would talk to the new guests and the second speaker would organize and speak to the other members of the event. And finally, the third speaker agreed that she will be supporting them. This lecture overall was informative, and they finally discussed about the next potential meeting that they will have in effect. Again, not great. Respond to a situation. So let's have a look here.
You have a part-time job at the university library. Your manager has asked you to work overtime on Saturday, but you'll miss the last bus home. Your friend has a car and might be able to help. What would you say to them?
So remember, you have to address the right person. You have to address your friend. If you ever panic here, start reading the question. Don't focus on the audio, because you can make up synonyms in the spot. Hey John, how you doing? I really have a massive favor to ask you and I hope that you could help me out. As you know, I have a part-time job at the university library and unfortunately my manager asked me to work overtime on Saturday. But the main problem is that I'm going to miss the very last bus that brings me home. So what I'd like to ask you, since you have a car and I know that you're very kind and a very nice guy that you might be able to help, would you be able to please give me a ride home on Saturday so I don't miss my bus? I'm happy to pay you back in gas money or buy you lunch next time that we hang out. Thanks a lot, John. It would mean the world to me and I really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you on Saturday. Again, you see, I'm just basically reading the question back so I don't forget.
You are in a class at college. The two students sitting next to you keep talking to each other. You can't hear anything your teacher is saying. What would you say to them?
So remember, you once again have to address these two people, right? Hi guys, I hope you're having a nice day so far. I apologize, I don't want to be rude, but I find the fact that you keep talking to each other in class in our college is extremely frustrating and it makes it very difficult for me to hear anything that the teacher is saying. I'm really trying to pass my exam and pass this test and focus on my classes and my studies, but unfortunately, because you guys are having a chat, I cannot actually hear anything that they're saying. I would really appreciate if you guys could keep it down a little bit or maybe save your discussion for after the class so we could all focus on the material presented by the teacher and get after it in order to pass our test. Thank you. Really appreciate your understanding. You can see, not the end of the world. Now on to the writing section. Let's go. So this is where we had some troubles next time. Let's see if this will be the case again or not. All right, summarize written text. So we got 10 minutes. Remember, you have to type directly in the box and They don't tell you the official word limit here, but it's actually 5 to 75 words. So let me maybe do this so you guys can see what I'm reading. This year's Nobel Peace Prize awards 1,000 scientists across the United Nations climate change. So usually the first 1 or 2 sentences are quite important. The scientists engaged in excellent painstaking work, blah, blah, blah. The award winner, former Vice President Al Gore. So if his name keeps repeating, I will include it. If not, I will avoid it. He tells us what to fear, the estimates, Academy Award winning movie, scientific errors. So in brackets, usually not important, but typically it's going to be important. Sea levels rise between only 12 and 50 centimeters. So this is all similar about sea levels rising. Likewise, so it's going to be a similar point. Melting of ice. All right, 8 centimeters, blah, 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 blah. We need new information. He also takes note of research in Greenland. He also talks about deaths, which are much bigger killer. The best study, the best study shows that by 2050, heat will claim 400,000 more lives, but 1.8 million fewer will die because of cold. Indeed, global warming will actually save lives. All right, so I like to kind of start typing right away after I got a basic idea, and I can perfect it later. So these are Nobel Peace Prize. So this year's Nobel Peace Prize. So I'll just say the Nobel Peace Prize rewards the 1,000 scientists of the United Nations Climate Change Panel. The scientists are engaged in work. Again, it's kind of repetitive. Moreover, the scientists, they establish exactly what the world should expect from climate change. They establish what the world should expect from climate change. Furthermore, we need connectors. Al Gore, I'm not going to include that he's the vice president, has spent much time telling us what to fear, has spent time telling, we cannot use first and second person, so we cannot say us, telling people what to fear. Let's see, so what do they have to fear? To fear, like sea level rises. Sea level rises. What else? We don't need to go into details about how much. This is usually not important. I want to find new keywords. Sea levels rises. Accelerated melting of ice in Greenland. What else? Would 8 centimeters to sea level rise? Same thing again. Temperature were higher. Doesn't matter. It's kind of the same idea. Okay, here we have maybe heat-related deaths. Heat-related deaths. Without mentioning dry temperature cold spells, which are... so what I'll do is, because this is my last thing in the list, I can say, comma, and heat-related deaths. Now, I saw a bit of a contrast. However, without mentioning the rising temperatures, reduce the number of cold spells. Rising temperatures will reduce the number of cold spells, which are a much bigger killer than heat. Thus, we always need a concluding word. The best study, fewer will die. Thus, fewer will die because of cold, and global warming will actually save lives. So my word limit is too high, but I just need to get below before the time runs out. So I still got 5.5 minutes. I'm pretty much done. I just need to cut it down and paraphrase it a little bit more. So we used to teach that 90% of the words used to be the same in the past. Now you have to change a certain percentage of the words. So at least 40%, 50%. The Nobel Peace Prize, is this capitalized or not? Rewards scientists, rewards, maybe acknowledges, recognizes scientists in the change panel. Moreover, they establish or they decide what the world should expect from climate change. Furthermore, Al Gore has spent time telling people what to fear. Spent, so has spent, just spent time telling in people, I already changed it anyways. Feel like sea level rises, accelerated melting of ice in Greenland, and heat-related deaths. However, rising temperatures will lower cold spells, which are a bigger threat than heat. Thus, fewer people will die because of cold, because of and global warming. And global warming will, in fact, will save lives. 74. I don't like to leave it that long. I'm going to try to cut it down a little bit further. The United Nations Climate Change Panel. Moreover, they decide what the world should expect. They predict. Maybe it's fine. Do we have climate change? I also have climate change earlier here, so I don't need to include it twice. Furthermore, I'll go ahead and spend time telling people what to expect. There's accelerating of ice in Greenland and heat-related death. However, rising or higher temperatures will lower cold spells, which are a much bigger threat than heat. Thus, fewer people will die because of cold, and global warming will save lives. All right, word count is okay. I like to get under 70, but that's fine. Let's check the spelling. What Peace Prize recognizes, be extra paranoid. No spelling mistakes here. There's no reason to make mistakes here. You're either taking the words from them, you're using their grammatical structure, you're just replacing one verb for another, one subject for another. So there's no reason for anybody here to make mistakes. Earlier, I wanted to use the word acknowledges here, but I was like, the spelling of acknowledge is a little bit sketchy. Like sometimes I'm not even sure if it's AK or ACK, so stay away from it. Scientists of the United Nations Climate Change Panel, moreover, they decide what the world should expect. They decide what to expect. Maybe what to expect. Furthermore, Al Gore spent time telling people what to expect. You see, double E, what to expect again. Expect, what to, maybe what's to come. What's to come, like sea level rises, accelerated melting of ice in Greenland, and heat-related deaths. Maybe because before, however, because it's a different kind of idea, I'll just put a semicolon and comma instead of comma. 2 minutes left. Higher temperatures will lower cold spells, which are much higher temperatures will lower cold spells, which are much bigger threat than heat. Thus, fewer people will die because of cold, and global warming will save lives. All right. Let's continue. Normally, I say spend till the very last second. Here, I'm quite confident that there's no mistakes. We have a minute 40, so if I finish a little bit earlier, maybe I'll get to enjoy my Saturday night. Let's go next. All right, read the passage below. So again, it's summarized written text. This paper highlights that travel and tourism generates directly and indirectly a large percentage of GDP. So the first sentence seems important. Jobs generated by travel and tourism spread across the economy, employing a large proportion of women, minority. Okay, we can take a little bit from there. Numerous examples. Let's stay away from examples, usually not important. Tourism has comparative advantages. All right, so let's get straight into it. This paper highlights that travel and tourism generates directly or indirectly a large percentage, a huge instead of large. A huge percentage of GDP. There is the word huge right after. And a large number of jobs and lots of jobs in the world economy. Moreover, which can be expected to grow. Don't really need it for now. Jobs generated by travel and tourism spread across the economy. Moreover, these jobs spread across the economy. Initially, I tried to write it the same because I don't want to think and mess up my grammar, so I'll write it exactly the same, and I recommend to change it after. These jobs spread across the economy, employ A large proportion and employ women, minorities, and young people. All right. Numerous examples, not important. Tourism has a comparative advantage. So furthermore, tourism has a comparative advantage in that its startup and running costs can be low because its starting and running costs are lower than other forms of industry development. So I don't have a lot of creative ideas for paraphrasing that. In this case, as you can see, the text is short, so probably you're not going to write 70, 75 words. So in my case, I'm at 51 so far. I got lots of time, so I can take a sip of my tea. Travel and tourism generates a huge percent. And look, for generate, some people will say generate, but why are you going to make that mistake? It's already here as travel and tourism considered as one thing. So it's grouped as a singular thing. It generates a huge percentage of GDP and lots of jobs in the world economy. Moreover, these jobs spread across the economy. Jobs maybe are distributed across the economy and hire and help hire women, minorities, and instead of young people, let's say youth. Furthermore, so here, I don't really have a conclusion. I like to always have a concluding word. So even if this is not obviously a conclusion, I'm just going to write hence, thus, or therefore before the last sentence. Hence, tourism has a comparative advantage because its starting and running costs are lower than other forms of industry, other maybe types of industry development. So in a second, I'm going to double check, triple check all of this, but I want to give you guys a heads up of what I'm going to do for the essay. So nowadays it's standard to have 2 writing summaries, and this is a good thing. Trust me. Why are writing summaries good? The main reason, it doesn't only give you points in the writing section. It also gives you quite a few points in the reading section, depending on the number of questions in total, but approximately 10 to 12% will come from your writing summary. So 10 to 12% in your reading section. So very important that you're doing it right. You know which content to pick, what's important, what's not important. Again, I don't have time right now in these 5 minutes to teach you the whole strategy for summarized written text. But you saw how I'm skipping certain examples, I'm skipping brackets, I'm looking for specific keywords like but or however. If I see it's a similar idea and it's more of the same information, I'll usually skip that, right? All right, so those of you that were watching the last video, you saw that we had some difficulties in the essay. And whenever I was trying to type, literally my computer would freeze and I had to copy paste from a different document. I had to type on my phone, send it to myself, so it was a complete nightmare. Maybe our videographer can put a video somewhere here that if you haven't seen it. Now, what's gonna happen? We have a video on YouTube, and again, maybe our editor, I'm clapping here so he gets the notification in the video. Maybe you can put a preview of the video where I basically explain how you can make your own writing template using something like ChatGPT. So do not use a template from the internet anymore. You have to have your own unique individual template. And before, we used to have one template for like 100 students, and then we used to switch it. Nowadays, when I have 100 students in a month, I have to create 100 separate templates for each student. Now, I do it largely with something like ChatGPT, but I always go in afterwards before the classes, and before I share the template, I check and correct any things that maybe don't make sense. So what I did is I generated a very quick template here. And again, if you watch our video on how to do that yourself, you can do it on your own later on. And I'll also put it in the description of this video. So I'm gonna do it here. I'm not gonna write it completely from scratch, just so you're aware, but you can do the exact same thing. Now, final word of caution. Please don't use this template that I will use in your exam. It's almost like a magic trick that once the magician reveals the trick, it's burned. He's not gonna use it anymore. So same thing here, if you start using my template exactly word for word, and then 50,000 people who also watch this video are going to use the same template, then all of you will probably fail. So please do not use my template. However, you can, if you want to take a screenshot, copy paste it into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you spit out a similar type of format for me? Can you change it? Can you make sure that it cannot be caught for plagiarism? Can you make sure that it doesn't look like a typical template? So just a preview, that's what's going to happen in the essay. Let me have a quick look again through all the mistakes here and prepare myself mentally for the essay and the reading section. And to be honest, writing is usually where I relax. Finish in a couple minutes, then chill out. Travel and tourism generates a huge percentage of GDP and lots of jobs in the world economy. Moreover, these jobs are distributed across the economy, okay, and help hire women, minorities, and youth. Hence, tourism has a comparative advantage because it's starting. See, this is wrong. It's not a verb, it's starting. It's a possessive pronoun. So the costs of these jobs, it's starting and running costs. So you see, I almost slipped up. That's why very important, double check, triple check your mistakes. Costs are lower than other types of industry development. Oh yeah, you see here as well, this word is used and it doesn't have an apostrophe, but I did it automatically. All right, let me find my sandal here. It's quite cold in Australia right now, so gotta stay comfy. Here we go. Right, so we got our essay. Some say that in today's world, the value of humanities has been eclipsed by the necessity of preparing for specific wealth-producing careers such as medicine. Discuss whether you think there is a role in today's changing world for study of the humanities. Basically, what I teach in my class is that every question can be broken down to whatever the topic is, good or bad, agree, disagree, advantage, disadvantage. So what I did here, I have a template, as you can see, which I generated, which is very, very limited. So in order to save time, normally I would remember this. I'm not going to type it all from scratch because I do want to do something after this mock test. So I don't want to get stuck here for the full 2 hours. As much as I love you guys, but I'm doing this mock test alone. So it's nobody around. All right. So very rough template, right? Remember, the official word limit here is 200 to 300 words. We want to get closer to 300 rather than 200 if you want to score the new 79 equivalent. And remember, your writing section has to be quite high, so you have to do really well. So let's have a look. So basically, studying humanities, good or bad. In today's world, the value of humanities has been eclipsed by the necessity of preparing for... So you need wealth producing. So basically, study humanities or study something that makes you money, like medicine. So I don't need to talk about medicine specifically, but I should mention those kinds of keywords. Now, what I want to do is I want to try to include those topics in my introduction as much as possible. People have very different views about studying humanities, especially since they don't necessarily lead to future economic success. While some believe that it brings more good than harm, others are not so sure, arguing that people should pursue other career paths which will make them wealthy. To understand the full picture, it's important to look at both sides of the issue, after which this essay will lead to a logical conclusion. All right, so introduction is pretty much done. One reason why many people support, so here, basically I'm going to say that studying humanities is good. Support individuals who want to pursue the study of humanities subjects. One reason why many people support individuals who want to pursue the study of subjects, I'm going to put a comma, is that, so do we really know what humanities subjects are? Like, In IELTS, if you don't know, you're gone. Here you can kind of wiggle your way out of it. It's maybe things that help human beings, right? All right, and study human is that. So what's the benefit of studying humanities? Is that students will be able to develop compassion and sympathy for their fellow human beings. A good example of this is, so I don't like to use that particular example. So, for example, research across many notable universities, such as Harvard and Oxford, had indicated that, and here we can make it up. So nobody's checking if your example is factual. That university students who pursue, who choose humanities subjects in such as sociology, again, I'm not even sure if it's a humanities subject, psychology and philosophy are much more likely to pursue professions that have a positive impact on society overall, such as social workers and elderly care practitioners. Practitioners. Okay. Because of this, so we need to come up with a conclusion. As a result, it should be continuously encouraged that pupils, I don't want to repeat the name students again and again, pupils are guided towards studies that can be a net plus for our communities as a whole. Again, not great. I want to get it over with as fast as I can, and then all the leftover time I can go and perfect it. So the way I like to do this, and this is something I prompted ChatGPT before I started it, I like to give a two-sided essay. On one side I agree, on the other side I disagree. It's easier than coming up with two ideas in favor, two ideas against. All right, so now, on the other hand, I'm going to say that choosing something else that makes you money, like medicine, is much better. So screw the humanities, let's go make some money. Let's become a lawyer, let's become a doctor. Now, I don't need to use these specific words, but I want to include maybe some of them in here for computer to know that I am on topic. On the other hand, critics argue that so what we can say is that other careers can maybe make you money now, help you take care of your immediate family, and once you're safe and secure and you're comfortable, then you can help more people afterwards, right? So that's my idea. On the other hand, critics argue that people should follow a career path that helps them provide for themselves and their families before worrying about the rest of society. For instance, all right. So for instance, I'm going to use an example of like some rich person, let's say Bill Gates. Love him or hate him. Everybody has their own opinions. But, you know, arguably he's trying to help people. He made a lot of money. So by focusing on making money, and that was actually my perspective for a long time, that, hey, let's make as much money as I can now, and then I'll be able to help more people. But if you can't really help yourself, how can you help other people? So that was the kind of main perspective. Let's see if we can put it in here. Now, the challenge is you have to use simple words. You have to use easy words. You cannot give some like metaphorical idea some allegory that the computer is not going to be able to understand. So we have to find a way to like explain it like you would explain it to a 5-year-old kid. This is what I always tell my students in the class. On the other hand, critics argue that people should follow a career path that helps them provide for themselves and their families before worrying about the rest of us. Helps them provide an income, maybe, because they did talk about wealth generating. So I want to use these kinds of words for themselves and their families before worrying about the rest of us. For instance, there are many notable examples of successful individuals like Bill Gates who initially focused on generating a large amount of wealth for themselves so they could have a bigger impact on a bigger, maybe positive impact on the world using their financial success rather than struggling to provide for them, I already use that term, rather than just struggling to make a living and not be able to help anyone as a result. So, and I have as a result here again. So thus, and just because I'm over the limit while I'm typing, it's not the end of the world as long as you cut it down and you're under 300 before the time runs out. Thus, it may be advisable to focus on individual success before attempting to save the world. All right, and the final paragraph, both arguments have valid but necessary. In the end, the impact of following humanities as a career really depends on how it's used and who it affects. A balanced approach is often the most reasonable path forward. All right, so we did pretty good. Still got 10 minutes. I would say my first paragraph is quite long, so let's cut it down. What is why people supporting videos who want to pursue the study is that students will be able to develop compassion and sympathy for their fellow human beings or just humans. For example, researchers across many notable universities such as Harvard, across notable universities such as Harvard, had let me put a comma to be safe, indicated that university students who choose humanities subjects like psychology instead of such as, like sociology, or let me say maybe, or psychology, put a comma, are more likely to follow professions that have a positive impact on society. Impact of society? No, it's on society. Such as social workers and elderly, such as social workers. Let me just leave this one for now. Sorry, elderly care workers. As a result, it should be encouraged that pupils are guided towards studies, that are a net plus for our communities as a whole, just our communities. Good enough. 4 words down, and I have 7 minutes to go. We're doing good. People have very different views about studying humanities, especially since they don't necessarily lead to future economic success. While some believe it brings more good than harm, others are not so sure, arguing that people should pursue other career paths, before which I need a comma generally, so I'm going to put that will make them wealthy. To understand the full picture, it's important to look at both sides of the issue, after which the essay will lead to a logical, which will lead to a logical conclusion. I'm at how many words? I think I'm just 300 exactly. 7 minutes to go. Whew. So let me double check again, because I think I may have fumbled a couple spelling words. And be extra paranoid here. Like, use baby words, just don't make mistakes. Don't use some fancy words that you don't know how to spell. People have different views about studying humanities, especially since they don't necessarily, necessarily, I'm pretty sure it's 2 C's. If you're not sure, delete. Since they don't lead to future economic success, double C, double S. While some believe it brings more good than harm, others are not so sure. Others argue, others just argue that people should pursue other career paths that will make them wealthy. To understand the full picture, it's important to look at both sides of the issue, which will lead to a logical conclusion. Also, make sure you don't have double spacing between words. Now, between the paragraphs, you always want to have one empty line. So if you ever want to double check, you should be able to fit the mouse, the cursor in here one time. One reason why many people support individuals who want to pursue the study of humanities subjects is that students will be able to develop compassion and sympathy for their fellow humans. For example, research across notable universities such as Harvard indicated that university students, just students who choose humanities subjects like sociology or psychology are more likely to follow professions that have a positive impact on society, such as social workers. As a result, it should be encouraged that pupils are guided towards studies that are a net plus for our communities. On the other hand, critics argue that people should follow a career path that helps them provide an income for themselves and their families before worrying about the rest of society. For instance, there are many notable examples of successful individuals like Bill Gates who initially focus on generating a large amount of wealth for themselves so they can have a bigger positive impact on the world using their financial success, rather than struggling to make a living and not be able to help anyone as a result. Thus, it may be advisable to focus on individual success before attempting to save the world. Not bad. So poetic. Both arguments have value depending on the situation. In the end, ultimately, they love these kinds of words. Ultimately, the impact of following humanities as a career really depends on how it is used, and who it affects. A balanced approach is often the most reasonable path forward. All right, so we still got 4 minutes on the clock. Again, I would highly urge you to be extra paranoid and check again and again and again. There's a very high chance I probably still have a mistake somewhere, so let's see. Now, onto the reading section. So for the reading section, the issue we had last time is that I was trying to talk too much to explain how to solve the questions, and then I was pressed for time. We still ended up getting 90 in the reading section, but this time I want to do it calm, not stressed out, not in a rush. So I want to give you guys a real preview of how to time yourself. So if you really want more in-depth of me explaining the reasoning, explaining the rationale, make sure to watch the previous video that I mentioned at the start. However, if you want to put yourself and kind of do this together with me, we're going to read the text together, we're going to talk out loud, we're going to argue together. Do I pick this word? Do I pick another word? So in that case, let's do that. Let's do that together. Just going to take a quick breather. My God, it's like hard to talk. It's like double talking, answering the questions and then also talking on top of that. Let's do this. And we're going to have our reading section. So for the drop down, fill in the blanks. They used to be called the reading and writing fill in the blanks. However, now the drop downs, they don't give points in the writing section anymore. So they only give points in the reading section. Very important. There's a lot of them. So we really need to make sure that, especially if you're looking for the 79 equivalent, ideally you don't want to make more than one mistake per question. Okay. And the main reason, because read aloud doesn't give you points in reading anymore, you really have to get more reading points from reading itself. So one more sip of tea and we begin. A creature may have fine physical defenses such as hard armor. So I have 24 minutes. Okay. Sharp spines may be such as and something smell, such as and what smell, and appalling means disgusting smell, or foul tasting flesh. So it has to be similar to foul. But none of these defenses much use in the something for survival, in the struggle, in the campaign, in the march for survival, in the struggle for survival, unless the animal also has the right behavior to go with it. Evolution shapes a living creature's size, color, and other. It has to be plural because otherwise it would be another, and other aspects. Evolution shapes and size, color, and other aspects or features. Shapes, no. Pieces, no. And other evolution shapes, other aspects, other features. The size and the color is kind of a feature, but I would say aspects. I'm not sure, but I'm going to come back to it. So I still have about a minute and a half left. The most something behaviors are instinctively or inbuilt. The most what behavior? Difficult, important, dangerous, automatic. Difficult, important, automatic maybe behaviors? I'm not sure. The creature can perform the actions without having to learn what to do. So it has to be automatic. Without learning what to do and how to do it by trial and error. Trial and error is a collocation and goes together. So we still got about a minute. Let's double check. A creature may have fine physical defense such as a hard armor or sharp spines. It may have a powerful chemical defense such as an appalling smell of foul tasting flesh, but none of these defenses is much used in the struggle for survival, in the struggle in the campaign, in the march for survival, struggle for survival. The game for no struggle. I struggle for something. Yeah, I march for. No, I march towards. And also have the right behavior to go with it. Evolution shapes a living creature's size, color, and other aspects and other features. Evolution features. It's a feature, or the brain is it really a feature? Aspects and other aspects maybe of their behavior could be. So I'm not going to say features because features usually just physical. It also shapes animals. So see, actions is actually not a feature. So yeah, I would assume it's aspects. The most automatic behaviors are instinctive or built in. The most automatic, the most important behaviors. I would say maybe the most important. It is automatic, yes, but maybe it's the most important behaviors are instinctive or built in. Yeah, even though this is automatic, but I think it's the most important to survive. Can perform the action without having to learn what to do and how to do it by trial and error. The most important behaviors are instinct, the most automatic, important, I would say. I'm going a little bit over time, so let's keep going. And then also more than 500 graduates found no significant difference between business schools that offer traditional courses and learning by doing. So hands-on versus traditional. Research challenges the ongoing trends across higher education institutes of something, of basing, of focus, of teaching. Research challenges the ongoing trend across higher education institutes of, must be teaching, focusing, focus, why is it spelled like that? Of teaching on, let's leave it for now. Focus is not usually two S's. That's kind of weird. All right. On experiential and suggests that universities need to reconsider their approach if they something increase, if they are to increase entrepreneurship, if they aim at increase. No, if they hope for increase, if they are to increase. Entrepreneurship education, something acts as a major, maybe is seen as a major force, is seen. Flexible card, there are ongoing shift towards experiential learning in business schools, something, there is little empirical evidence. Since there is little, okay, let's have a look here. There is an ongoing shift towards experiential learning in business schools. There is little empirical evidence to suggest this approach has better impact than traditional learning. Yet, so there's a bigger focus, even there is, no, also there is, yet there is little, there is no evidence yet. Okay, cool. So I'm supposed to go next very soon. You should challenge the ongoing trends across higher education institutes of something on experience, of focusing, on basing on, and suggesting, on teaching on, aiming on, focusing on. I think it has to be focusing, but that's so weird. Why is it double S? So weird. So weird. Yeah. The research challenges the ongoing trend across higher education institutes of research challenges of focusing, of basing on experiential, of focusing on and teaching on experiential, I suggest the university to consider approach if they're on aiming on. I think it's focusing, but that's so weird. Anyways, let's continue. New technologies helping cities replace falling water infrastructure. Piping systems allow polymer-based materials to be inserted into old pipes to repair faults and something leaks and reduce leaks and protect and extend and reduce leaks. When it comes to managing wastewater, new systems are something, such as advanced new systems are discovering, are introducing, are existing, are emerging. Much can be achieved by re-examining the products at the something stage, at the origin, at the develop, at integral, at the environment stage. I don't know. By designing items that can be more easily picked apart at the. So if it's designing them, that's early stage. At the development stage has to be. To pick apart, use different materials. Companies can increase the something content of what they produce. The disposable content, repeatable, recyclable content. If I use different parts, right? If I can pick them apart, I can recycle stuff. Or companies can increase the something content of what they produce. Cutting waste, disposable content. Companies can reduce the disposable, or stuff that I throw out. So I replace it. So it has to be repeatable. Companies can reduce the disposable. So the stuff that I throw out is disposable. I don't want to throw stuff out. I want to recycle, right? So they can increase the something. Companies can increase the. Let's have a look again. By designing a few different materials, companies can increase the something content. The cutting waste. The can increase the. Yeah, it has to be, I think, recyclable, repeatable, recyclable content that they of what they produce, cutting waste and generating cost savings by being able to reuse parts and materials. Makes sense. So let's have a look at certain pipes to repair faults and reduce leaks. Induce, protect leaks. No, has to be reduce leaks. New water systems are emerging. Products at the development stage, and here by designing easily picked apart, and they use few different materials. Companies can increase their recyclable content. Okay, looks pretty good. Let's keep going. Urban planning approaches to something noise to vanishing noise, eliminating noise on a city-by-city basis. They something and both reducing the sound they maybe emit, they will produce, I have produced, not sure. Improving, expanding, and properly funding public transit removes cars from the road. Both reducing the sound they produce. So improving, expanding, and properly funding public transit removes both removes cars on the road, both reducing the sound they produce and replacing it with quite a produce. I think it's produce because it hasn't been done in the past yet. In architecture, acoustics should play a greater maybe role, yeah. And first landing stage, something then tacked on as an afterthought. Noise controls should be a consideration from the very first planning stage, rather than, yeah, for sure. Urban planning approaches to eliminating noise, to eliminate vanishing, disposing, disappearing. No, it has to be eliminating. Improving, expanding, and properly funding public transit removes cars from the road, both reducing the sound they produce because they still produce it, but it's just not in your area. So reducing the sound they produce, replacing it with quiet options. Okay, should play a greater role rather than. So that looks good. And after this, I'm gonna have my reorder paragraphs. Lovely. Use a variety of courses, asking the right questions. Okay, and the greater challenge of critical analysis and synthesis. Something. So look at the comma. Very important. This concise text teaches students. For this reason, instead, specifically in such cases, I'm not sure, so I need to see if it's similar or opposite. Teaches students to think critically. Using a variety of courses in various disciplines, asking the right questions helps students bridge the gap between simply memorizing or blindly accepting information and the greater challenge of critical analysis and synthesis. So if it teaches students how to think critically, that for this reason, this concise text, specifically in such cases, for this reason. Yeah. Asking the right question. For this reason, this concise text teaches students to think critically by exploring the components of arguments and on how to spot fallacies and manipulations and obstacles to critical an obstacle for critical it's an obstacle to critical obstacle for me, it's an obstacle to me, an obstacle for critical thinking, and on how to spot fallacies and manipulations and obstacles in critical thinking, to thinking critically, to critical thinking, both written and visual communication. It teaches them something to alternative points. It teaches them how responding to alternative points of view and develop to respond. So you see, because this is develop past tense, I need the same thing. It teaches them when responding, to respond to alternative points of view and develop a solid foundation. All right, so looking good. Just not sure about for this reason. Instead, this concise text is helps students bridge the gap and greater. Okay, for this reason, this concise text instead specifically, maybe for this reason specifically, I think it's maybe specific. For this reason, this specifically, yeah, I think it's specifically, because it's more likely to go with a comma. Just fast manipulation goes to critical thinking. Looks good. Let's go. All right, multiple choice, multiple answer. Read the text and answer the questions by selecting. So 1310, I don't want to spend more than a minute here. According to the passage, which of the following statements are true? Humans have been unable to successfully adapt to different climates. This is, I know it's not true from my knowledge. The way societies organize themselves is an insubstantial cultural difference. Language is generally considered to be a cultural difference. Societies today still retain many cultural differences from the past. I think that's probably true. I haven't read it yet. Cultural diversity is unnecessary for continuing. Okay. There's general consensus among mainstream anthropologists that humans first emerged in Africa about 2 million years ago. Since then, we have spread throughout the world, adapting to different conditions, to periodic and changes, the local. Okay. The many separate societies that emerged around the globe differently markedly from each other, and many of these differences persist to this day. So it persists. They still have these from the past, yes. As well as the more obvious cultural difference that exists between people, such as language. Language is generally considered to be a cultural difference. Culture, such as language. Okay, so to be honest, I have 2. There's unlikely to be 3 here, because otherwise I wouldn't have 5 options. So I'm not going to look for a third. I'm going to go next. Which of the following views are expressed by Big Bang experts? Good idea of how many Big Bangs there have been. Yeah, only 1, I think. Other Big Bangs may have been unable to support life. I don't know. Big Bangs are not necessarily a rare event. Big Bangs will occur less often in the future. The creation of another universe is inevitable. Some experts believe there may have been many Big Bangs, perhaps trillions. Other Big Bangs may have been Big Bangs are not necessarily a rare event. Okay, so that seems like it. Spread through mighty span of the eternity. And the reason we exist in this particular one is that this is one we could exist in. Other Big Bangs may have been unable to support life. Maybe. As the University once put in the answer to the question, what happened? I offer the modest proposal that our universe is simply one of those things which happen from time to time, to which adds, although the creation of a universe might be very unlikely, the creation of another universe is inevitable. That's not true. Creation of a universe might be very... Tyler emphasized that no one had counted the failed attempts. So there's been a lot of attempts. We don't have a good idea. Other Big Bangs may have been unable to support life. Big Bangs are not necessarily a rare event. Good. All right. Reorder paragraphs. That mayor's aggressive control. Which mayor? Which aggressive control? Education scholars generally agree that mayors can help failings. One review pointed they are starting, however, to utter warning. So if this is now a warning before, there should have been something good. Education scholars generally agree that mayors can have failing school districts. One review pointed to a certain big city's mayor style as an example of what not to do. That mayor, so this mayor, aggressive control over schools was criticized for reducing parents' influence. They are starting, however, to utter warnings. Wow. I think this is the easiest reorder paragraph I've ever seen in my life. Education scholars generally agree that mayors can have failing. Okay, makes sense. One review pointed to a certain big city's mayor as an example of what not to do. That mayor's aggressive control, so which mayor is this mayor, was criticized for reducing parents' influence. They are starting, however, to utter warnings. So now is the opposite. Fantastic. Once you have done this, you have set the stage for successful review. Get them down. To be a good listener, your main job, to be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concentrate on the main points of the lecture. Your main job in taking lecture notes is to be a good listener. Okay, I think that's actually first. Your main job in taking lecture notes is to be a good listener. To be a good listener, you must learn to focus and by the way, in the exam, I like to read it out loud because it actually gives me an idea of the flow. If you read here, you're going to get it wrong more often than not. To be a good listener, you must learn to focus and concentrate on the main points of the lecture. Get them down and then later reorganize them in your own words. Once you have done this, you have set the stage for successful reviewing. So I get them down, the main points, and then later reorganize them in my own words. Once I'm reorganize them in my words, I have set the stage for a successful reviewing process. Looks good. Drag and drop, fill in the blanks. Australia is a dynamic multicultural society viewed by many as the world's most desirable place to live. Here, Frank Welsh traces Australia's intriguing and varied history to something, how to what? To settlements, to emerge, to unifies, to examine, to became, to retains. I try all the options. Don't stop at the first one that you saw that makes sense. Try all of them because there's often other words that make sense. To examine how this society what? Emerged, became, wavering, retained, emerged from its ancient Aboriginal tribes in earliest British convict settlements, most likely, convict settlements to today's modern nation, one that something, strong links, one that what? Became, that retains strong links with its colonial past, but is something independent and diverse, but is increasingly increasingly independent and diverse. Still good on time. I have 5 questions. So to examine how the society emerged and earlier British convict settlements and modern nation, one that retains strong links, but it's increasingly okay. I have to hurry up a little bit. Notice siblings are the same, not even identical twins. Parents often something about why their children are so different. Often what? Often puzzle over, maybe. Compensate, broad, suggest, over, interpret. They puzzle, like they think over, they're confused over why their children are so different. They'll say, I something them up all the same. I them up all the same. I raised them up. I brought them up. Not raised. I raised them. I didn't raise them up. I brought them up all the same. They forget that what something our behavior, what shapes maybe, what suggests, what interpret, what determines our behavior isn't what happens to us, but how we interpret what happens to us. So parents often puzzle, compensate, suggest, no. I brought them up all the same. They forget that what determines, what raised our behavior, no, what compensates, no, what suggests, no, to us, but how we interpret what happened. Okay, good. Couple more questions. The people of Alaskan something islands have been long accustomed to shipwrecks. They've been part of local consciousness since the Japanese whaling ship ran something near the western end. This one is in our practice platform. I have done it before. Ran aground means it basically sank. Aground, into the ground. So the ship sank to the ground. Volcanic archipelago scurried, succeeded subsequent vessel. Volcanic archipelago is a set of volcanic islands. Philippines, Indonesia, you guys would know. Shout out to the Philippines, by the way. Hope everybody's safe. I know you guys had a massive earthquake recently. This wreck inadvertently named one island rat island when the ships rode and something ashore made themselves at home. Scurried ashore, succeeded ashore, subsequent vessel ashore, scurried. What does it sound like? Scurried, hurried. You need something with ed, and succeeded ashore doesn't make any sense. Since the last papal reform, something have been offered to make the Western calendar more useful. Several have been offered. Several proposals have portable and regular addendums have been offered. If it's proposals, I make a proposal. I don't offer a proposal usually. Have been offered addendums. Addendum sounds like when you change something in a paper. Like I can't think of the synonym right now. Since the last papal reform, several addendums have been offered to make the Western calendar more useful or acceptance or proposals or portable or notoriety or regular, I guess. Very few reforms have gained official acceptance. Yes. There are other different decided French public calendar such official reform. So look here, several proposals is the only one here have been offered. Addendums, portable notoriety. Nothing else makes sense here. All right, and we got 5 minutes left. We're doing fantastic. Last mock test, we're really rushing, so I can take my time, sip my tea, and enjoy. This information is mainly about what? Infection control procedures, removing clutter in patient areas. So the main topic is usually going to be in the first 3 sentences. Auditing infections, dealing between health staff and patients, laundering linen and uniforms. Keep patient areas tidy and ensure they are cleaned regularly. Keep patient areas. So keep them tidy, clean them, wash hands with soap and alcohol before contact with patients. There's likely to be exposure to body fluids. Okay, this information is about, looks like infection control procedures because they have wounds. Machine washing, transfer all linen appropriate color, curtains, pillows, and cushions. To ensure compliance with policy is also necessary. Keep patients airtight and ensure they are cleaned regularly. Wash hands and soap before and after contact, where it is likely to be exposed to body fluid. So, infection control, the information mainly about infection control, dealing between health staff and patients, laundering linen and uniforms, auditing, infection control policies, infection control procedures, removing clutter, no auditing. They don't really audit. Regular auditing to ensure compliance with policy is also necessary. Yeah, that looks right. Dealing with health staff and health patients. Regular auditing to ensure, yeah, that looks right. I have 3 minutes. Whatever. It's probably going to be right anyways. According to the text, which of the following is true of pure competition? Changes of the market price are insignificant. Price is not affected by change in seller supply. A small wheat farm can affect price by producing less wheat. Individual firms feel that they have no effect on the market. Pure competition describes a market in which there are so many firms that each acts as though it can exert no control over price. In pure competition, each individual firm sells such a tiny part of the total market supply that assumes its actions have no effect on the market price. Because a small wheat farm is just one of over 1 million farms in the same market. It is very unlikely to produce less wheat this year in an attempt to raise the price of wheat. So basically, one small farm doesn't make a big difference in this context. According to the text, which of the following is true of pure competition? Changes of the market price are insignificant. Price is not affected by change in a seller's supply. A small wheat farm can affect the individual firms feel they have no effect on the market. That looks right. Whew. We made it so far. If you're watching the video to this extent, give yourself a little pat on the back. Okay, so this time much more relaxed compared to before. Now, listening section. So summarize spoken text, very important. I'm going to do it quickly, and normally people prefer to write their notes in the paper. However, in this question and this question only, when you're listening to the audio, you can actually take notes in the box directly. In my case, I'm much faster at typing than I am at writing by hand, so I will type there. I think it's also going to be easier for you to see compared to trying to decipher my scribbles and whatever I had tried to write earlier. Yeah. Now, I want to come back. Before I start this question, it's important to revisit something I didn't really have time to discuss. When you saw me do retail lecture and summarize group discussion, at some point about halfway through, like let's say they're reading an audio and say, I'm really worried about the upcoming department meeting that we have for which we have to prepare. I just remember upcoming department meeting. And as you see, I was talking over the audio, and I know you're sitting there thinking, oh, Alex, shut up finally, man. I can't hear, I can't focus. I'm doing this on purpose because you don't need to remember the whole sentence. As you notice, what I did in retail lecture and summarize spoken text, and what I also do here is I have kind of a more or less standard starting of the sentence. The speaker also added information such as, additionally, the speaker also mentioned. Furthermore, the gentleman also discussed. And then the ending, I try to keep it as it is. So if we get chunks of words, 4 or 5 words, 4 or 5 words, 4 or 5 words, the computer is not really checking if it's accurate. And you're getting enough notes, and it's easier to remember that you're not getting distracted, trying to remember everything, and then you get stuck, and then you don't write enough. So, I'm tired of talking. Let's go. And double check how many questions you're going to have in total in the listening.
So let's just talk a little bit about a telescope. Our eye is the telescope we all are used to. It's a little tiny 5-millimeter telescope, and it serves us very well. But if we make telescopes bigger, we get a couple good things. We have larger telescopes, and they collect a lot more light, so we can see things that are fainter. But it turns out they greatly improve detail, and that's because of the nature that light is a wave, and wave effects, or what we call quantum mechanical effects, mean that when you use a little telescope to look at waves, it becomes blurry through what we call diffraction. And so larger telescopes are extremely useful to improve detail. The other thing that telescopes allow us to do is to put modern digital detectors behind them. Our eye is about the same sensitivity as a photographic plate. A photographic plate can be sat there and It can look at the sky for an hour, so it can see fainter. But modern digital detectors are almost 100 times more efficient than our eyes at collecting light. And so you can improve things by a factor of 100. That's like building a telescope 10 times bigger. And so that improvement has been one of the things that's allowed astronomy to do so much in the optical regime in the last 30 years.
So much in the last 30 years. So if you're a confident typer, look how much more I can type. Now, this question normally gives you 10 minutes. However, nowadays it doesn't give you minutes because the moment the audio starts playing, the timer over here in the top right corner, as you can see, also starts. So make sure if you're doing this, do not delete your notes until you use more or less every single word that you could, as much as possible. Because some people erase their notes too soon and then you cannot recover them. So the main topic of this lecture was about the telescope and how our eye is the telescope and how our eye, we cannot say first or second person, our, us, and how people's eye is like a telescope, but telescope that is 5 millimeters and serves us well. Moreover, bigger and larger telescopes collect a lot more light, improve detail because light is a wave. I don't need to make sense of it. I don't even need to understand it. And I'm missing a verb. Quantum mechanical effects. I don't know what I missed there. And maybe has. Quantum mechanical effects. Moreover, all right, what do we have next? Becomes blurry. So, moreover, they allow modern digital detectors, our eyes like a photographic plate, maybe to work just like the eye is like a photographic plate. So this sentence doesn't really make sense. It doesn't need to allow modern digital detectors to work just like the eye is a photographic plate. Moreover, furthermore, in addition, modern detectors are 100 times more efficient and can improve things. Thus, the improvement allowed astronomy to do so much in the last 30 years. I still got about 5 minutes left, so 166 words. Let me get rid of this because I used more or less most of it. Okay, even this is actually too long. Great, good problem to have. So I have 5 minutes to cut it down. The main topic of this lecture was about the telescope and how people's eye is like a telescope that is 5 millimeters and serves us well. Done. Moreover, bigger and larger telescopes collect, spelling mistake, and again, more, I spelled wrong, collect just more light, improve detail, and improve detail because light is a wave. Light and improved detail because light is a wave and has quantum mechanical effects. Moreover, modern digital detectors, do I have the word digital already? I don't think so. To work, just like to work maybe like a photographic plate. Now, those of you who are obviously understood the audio well, I'm distorting the meaning here. I'm saying that modern digital detectors work like a photographic plate, but that's not true. They said our eye works like a photographic plate. That's not the important thing. Again, the computer here is not really checking your logic. So you can get away with some squirrely sentences that are not 100% logical, but the number one thing is spelling, grammar, punctuation, and of course you have to use quite a few words from the actual audio. Maybe in addition, I can say likewise. Modern detectors are 100 times more efficient. I can improve, are more efficient. Let's get rid of this improve things. Thus, the improvement allowed astronomy to do so much in the last 30 years. I gotta cut down 3 words. I got 3 minutes. Great. This lecture was about the telescope. I can just say telescopes. I already have the word telescope, so let's try not to repeat it too much. And how people's eye is like a telescope that is 5 millimeters. Millimeters, that is 5. See, millimeters. I'm pretty sure there's 2 millimeters. I'm pretty sure there's 2 L's, but I don't want to take a chance to have a spelling mistake. So why don't we say centimeters? Mm, I'm not sure if mm is going to get picked up correctly. So that is 5 centimeters. Who cares? Moreover, bigger and larger, just larger telescopes collect more light and improve detail because light is a wave and has quantum mechanical effects. Moreover, they allow modern digital detectors. So let's get rid of modern because I'm checking that I have it here already. They allow digital detectors to work like a photographic plate. Likewise, modern detectors are 100 times. Instead of likewise, let's say however. Modern detectors are 100 times more efficient. Thus, the improvement allowed astronomy to do so much in the last 30 years. All right, 69 words. Let me reread everything to make sure there's no spelling mistakes. This lecture was about telescopes and how people's eye is like a telescope that is 5 centimeters. Moreover, larger telescopes collect more light and improve detail because light is a wave and has quantum mechanical effects. Moreover, they allow digital detectors to work like a photographic plate. However, modern detectors are 100 times more efficient. Thus, the improvement allowed astronomy to do so much in the last 30 years. All right, pretty good. 69 words. Remember here, they actually tell you in the question is 50 to 70. In the writing summaries, they don't, which is pretty annoying. Next question. Okay. Hello. Did I miss a question by accident? It's weird that it's at 1 of 2.
In his book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and Other Clinical Tales, neurologist Oliver Sacks relates the tale of a medical student who one day woke up and found that his sense of smell was so acute that like a dog he could walk around identifying people, places, and things by his sense of smell. And what a wondrous experience it was. Like a visit to another world, he said. Normally, we humans don't have a sense of smell as acute as many other animals. We tend to rely more on what we see or hear to tell us about the world. Still, our sense of smell is powerful. Most of us can detect 10,000 different odors, from cigar smoke to a chlorinated swimming pool, from curry to a city sewer. And think about how a particular odor can instantly conjure up past memories. Maybe it's fresh-cut grass that makes you think of childhood summers, or baking bread that reminds you of a special holiday.
All right, so I'm pretty sure this is right. I'm just trying to set up my next camera because soon we're going to have listening fill in the blanks. What do students say about their current residence?
Hello, what can I do for you?
We were hoping that you might be able to give us some advice about accommodation for next year.
Where do you live at the moment?
We're in one of the halls of residence.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay, yeah.
But a few problems. It can get a bit noisy some nights, so hard to study.
Yeah, and also, the internet connection just keeps going down. It's a real pain.
Oh, no, that's not good, is it? So, you want to move out?
Possibly rented accommodation?
Well, it's very common. Most students do this in
And
the
by the way,
second
here,
year.
you don't want to spend more than 5 seconds after the audio is done. So.
But of course, you have to pay for it. It is more expensive, isn't it?
Generally, yes, but there's a range. Also, you may have to pay for services sort of on top of your rent, like gas and electricity, and the television license.
And by the way, here, because there's 5 options, likely there's only going to be 2 answers because this question has negative marks as well. So if there's 5 options to choose from, it's impossible to have 3 correct answers. Because if I was to pick all of them, it doesn't make sense that I would have 3 right and 2 wrong, because then I'd be getting 1 mark for free.
You're very helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and next. Hello? Did it work? Hello? I hope it's not lagging again. Next. Hello? All right, good. All right, let me start the other video so you guys can see my terrible handwriting. Follow with your finger.
Well, the banana is the first cultivated fruit. It's one of the food items that literally brought people out of the jungle, out of their hunter-gatherer lifestyles, and was there at the dawn of agriculture, which is what helped force human beings into communities. It's really one of the things that helped invent human culture. It's about 7,000 years of history. And the banana, from its center of origin, which is believed to be Papua New Guinea, it spread out with people who traveled in boats across the Pacific into the mainland of Asia and all the way south to Australia, across Indonesia, Micronesia, and eventually they moved as far as Africa and even possibly to Ecuador, all in this time and all on paddled boats and wind-driven boats.
Paddle boats. So first one was that literally brought people out of the jungle at the dawn, D-A-W-N. Next we have communities. Next is the center of origin. Origin and paddle I have already. Is that literally brought people out of the jungle at the dawn of agriculture. Communities from its center of origin and paddle boats. Great. Next one.
Perhaps you remember the dire predictions from the analysts. The fall-off in housing threatened to drag down the entire economy. High energy prices would put the kibosh on consumer spending. And runaway inflation was poised to take off. David Weiss is an economist at Standard & Poor's. He says in the end, none of those things happened in the final 3 months of last year.
Final 3 months. This was a tougher one. Final 3 months. The fall in housing thought to drag down the entire price. Remember that the fall off in housing thought or throughout thought to drag down the entire. I think it's thought. I heard throughout, but I think it's thought. Runaway inflation, like we have in the past couple of years since COVID. Thank you, government, for printing too much money. David Weiss is an economist at the center that happened in the final 3 months. So generally, if the number is less than 10, it's better to spell it out. Thought to drag down the entire economy. Runaway inflation was poised to inflation. Economist. You see? Be extra paranoid. For question 5.
There's an idea that essentially sleep allows a homeostatic readjustment of synapses. During wake, you're bombarded by experiences, and that leads to multiple synapses being engaged and their weights being changed. And then what sleep allows, and specifically actually slow wave sleep, is a pruning back off those unimportant synapses. So it's kind of like I imagine in some senses the judicial pruning of your roses to get a nicer flower. So the idea is that the slow wave sleep is able to prune back synapses that are energetically wasteful, but are also wasteful in an information processing account because they're adding noise. And that clearer, crisper signal then translates into improved performance the next day.
All right, so the first one, with careful attention, we can grow up right into what we might call a nicer flower with crisper, fresher flowers and units. Doesn't really sound right. The two always work in conjunction, one building and the other pruning brain connections. Sounds like it. Overall, dreaming makes our brain work better, more efficiently. Not necessarily. It makes as much sense to relate sleep to the improvement of brain functions as it does to link sleep to pretty garden, nicer flowers. The two are simply unrelated. That's not true. It looks like it's the second one.
What is classical physics? Let's start with the easiest, perhaps. What is physics? Physics is the study of the natural world. It's the study of the physical world, the world we live in. It's experimental science, and it's really the heart, the core of all other experimental sciences. Physics goes beyond just a simple description of nature. It's an attempt to unify a broad variety of phenomena that we observe in the world, both the natural world and the technological world. We're looking for the underlying principles, the explanation, the prediction. We would like to be able to really understand the world around us, measurable things in particular. Physics studies matter and energy, space and time, studies particles and waves, forces and motion. These are a lot of words that we use. We have deep intuitive sense about what those words mean. And part of what we're going to be doing in this course is to start looking carefully at each of these words. What do I mean by energy? What do I mean by force? How would I define that in a laboratory and measure it? And what use is it? How does it help me to understand things about the world?
So here it looks like option number 4. I've already read it ahead of time, so yeah, while he was playing the audio.
And we identified 15 priority projects which are supposed to be urgent and immediate needs of adaptation. And these projects, the first one is slightly being implemented, but there is so much bureaucracy behind the funding of that project that it still hasn't been implemented properly. So if these were urgent and immediate needs, then how come it's not being implemented on an urgent and immediate basis? Because the fund is not there. Even if the fund is there, some bureaucratic things are holding it behind. There are some of the funds, they say, like, you have to have certain infrastructures in place and certain things have to be in place for us to fund this additional climate change. But the funds are, what everyone says in these climate change conferences, are not enough. They're just not enough.
Lack insufficient competition between organizations. So she said bureaucracy earlier on. Let's keep going. When the speaker refers to the person who visited his school as being a visionary, he is being empathetic, inconsistent, irrational, sarcastic.
When I was 14 years old, a visionary visited my school. The man was a pioneer in new technologies, and he had come to announce how the world I was growing up in was on the verge of radical change. He brandished a VHS cassette and announced that television was going to be transformed forever. Using the power of VHS, everyone would make their own TV programs. Instead of accepting the bland output of comedy and drama from the existing networks, we would simply take control ourselves and become producers as well as consumers. TV stations were going to close, corporations would fold, and a new wave of creativity was about to be unleashed. For me, at that age, it seemed like impeccable logic, and the scenario he described seemed inevitable. Over the following years, it became clear that what he had predicted was certainly not coming true, and I began to think of him as an idiot.
So idiot is a nice way to say, irrational is a nice way to say idiot. So let's keep going. And this is select missing word where there's going to be a beep at the end. It's about free trade.
We don't really have a free trade regime. Free trade would mean that you took away all barriers to trade, all impediments to a level playing field. We don't have a level playing field. For instance, the United States and the EU subsidize agriculture. That means that producers in these countries get money for producing. They don't just rely on the market. Free trade would be just rely on the market. Almost half their income comes from government subsidies. Somebody might say they actually spend more money farming Washington than they farming the land. So the problem is that developing countries, too poor to give subsidies, have to compete with this highly subsidized American and European agriculture. So even if they were just as efficient, even if they were twice as efficient, they would have a
hard time competing. All right, highlighting correct words, and after this I will have either 3 or 4 dictations. So very high chance dictation will be next.
Over half of patients had what we called the no symptoms, no asthma health belief. They thought about and managed their asthma as an acute episodic illness, the way someone would treat a cold or a flu. They felt when they had their wheezing or shortness of breath, that's when they had their asthma, and it made perfect sense for them to use their quick relief medicines and their chronic controller medicines then. But once they started feeling better, they felt there was no reason for using those medicines because they felt okay.
So health belief, it sounds like relief. Sounds very, very close. I think that looks right. Only one way to find out.
Consumers, of course, are also keeping an eye on prices, especially at the gas pump. When gasoline topped $3 a gallon last year, many drivers lost their enthusiasm for SUVs and started paying renewed attention to MPG. Another question mark for the industry is whether consumers and policymakers will maintain that focus on fuel efficiency, with gas prices in much of the country now closer to $2 a gallon.
All right, so this time we're much better on timing. We have time for dictations, knock on wood, no technical difficulties so far, so hopefully we'll do dictations without any issues. Those of you that watched the previous mock test, you also saw that my computer got stuck in the very last question. I knew it, I heard it, I said it out loud, and I literally couldn't type it because the computer was just bugging so much. So I got 5 minutes. What I always recommend in this case is check your markers. Be extra paranoid, check both of them, make sure they're writing, okay? Check one, check the other, and then I don't recommend typing in the box directly. I recommend writing by hand. So I will attempt to do the same for you guys right here, but the next one for sure, 12, 13, 14 will be dictation. So let's get cozy. Or actually, maybe I'll type. Maybe it's going to be faster for me. Make sure to click in first.
Most of the students had not considered this issue before.
Consider this issue before. Most of the students, because it's plural, had not considered this issue before. Always full stop at the end. Reread it out loud so you can hear your mistakes. Most of the students had not considered this issue before. Great. Next, if you're typing, click in the box.
When workers ask for higher wages, companies often raise prices.
Companies often raised prices. So initially I heard when work is asked, right? For higher wages, companies often raise their prices, but it doesn't make any logical sense. And this is actually in our material, so I heard it before. Or you can see that it doesn't make sense, something there is wrong. So when work is asked, no. When maybe workers ask for higher wages, and I heard a pause, that's why I put a commas, companies often raised prices. When workers asked, I know it's asked because here I remember it said raise, so it has to be ED as well. When workers asked for higher wages, companies often raised prices. Raise prices or raise their prices? Pretty sure it's raise prices. And let me turn up the volume. One last one. Let's do this. I forgot to check it again, but it's fine. Click in the box.
Your role will principally involve development of new chemical processes.
The development of new chemical processes. Your role will principally involve the development of new chemical processes. Sounds about right. How many words I have? Where's the word counter here? It doesn't say actually here. Okay, doesn't matter. Your role will principally involve the development of new chemical processes. That looks about right. So, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are still here, thank you for watch. Thank you for watch so much. Thank you so much for watching. As you can see, it's been a bit of a trip. I'm gonna submit it in a couple seconds. I always recommend submit it on your own. And it's going to take maybe 1-2 hours to get the result. So as soon as I get a result, I will have a big reveal. I will record the video for you. Promise I will not peek at it before I share it with you. And then we'll see, we'll analyze. I believe the score will probably be 90, 90, 90, 90 once again. So let's see, but we'll discuss it all shortly. I hope you enjoyed it so far. And before I show you the result, once again, if you can like the video, leave a comment. What was your favorite part? What was the most nerve-wracking question? What are you surprised by? What was difficult? What was easy? Anything that comes to mind, let me know. And once again, thank you. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. This is what keeps me motivated to spend my Saturday night with you. Now, on to the final step. Your role will principally involve the development of new chemical processes. Let us submit and stay tuned. I will be back after dinner, open the result, and let's see how it went. All right, so here we are. It's been a couple of hours, and I have to admit something I'm somewhat ashamed of. I wasn't able to keep my promise. Actually, I wasn't able to keep two promises. The first one is I wasn't able to hold myself back from checking the result ahead of time. And the second promise that I broke is that I set out in this video to score 90, 90, 90, 90 for you, to show you how you can do this in the exam. But unfortunately, I was not able to score 90, 90, 90, 90. So in the next couple seconds, you will see what is the actual result. And I'm going to break it down why it's not 90, 90, 90, 90. And the sections that we did get 90 have some learnings that we can take away, have some lessons. So let's get into this. All right. And here we go. All right. So as you can see here, we weren't able to score 90, 90, 90, 90. But we came very, very close. We got 87 in reading and everything else is 90, 90, 90, 90. So let's break this down. What does this mean? What can we learn from that? What should you do differently in your exam going forward, perhaps? All right, so small surprise, still very good news. Anybody who would need the 79 equivalent, the 8 band equivalent with the new updated PT scoring, you would still get 20 points towards your Australian visa. Now, I couldn't help myself, but straight after doing the mock test, I went and Googled some things, and maybe our video editor could include some moments here that I was unsure about. So we lost 3 points in reading. Where could these 3 points come from? The first thing, if you recall, there's one question in the fill in the blanks that I wasn't sure. I think it was the word focusing, and it was very weird looking for me with 2 S's, and it was really bothering me. I did end up choosing it, but I didn't realize why there are 2 S's. And of course, British and American spelling makes a difference, especially for those kinds of words. So British people would normally spell focusing with 2 S's. Now, in my case, I spell a lot with the American spelling. So for me, it's very rare to use that. So that's why it looked very weird. I still believe that fill in the blank was correct. However, there are a couple other fill in the blanks in reading that I wasn't sure about, at least 1 or 2. There could be multiple choice, choose multiple answers. Another problem is I did finish reading a little bit fast this time. So if you remember in the previous mock test where we got 90, 90, 90, and we failed the writing section, the reading was 90, but we're very rushed and very pressed for time. This time I finished 5 minutes early, and maybe I didn't spend as much time in the last 2-3 questions as I could have. And the final thing that comes to mind, in highlight incorrect words in the listening section. So the second last question before dictation, if you recall, there's one word that sounded very familiar, very similar to what I clicked, but it could be the wrong word. So I clicked on that word, but maybe it wasn't actually wrong. And if I did that, it's actually a double mistake because highlight incorrect words in listening gives negative points. So let's say if that word was actually not an incorrect word and I clicked on it as an incorrect word, basically I get -1 from whatever my total is. So it's even worse when you sometimes miss a word and then you click one extra. It's almost like a double mistake because you didn't get that point and then you go -1 on top of that. So overall, not bad. I hope this is encouraging for you if you're preparing for your exam. Some of you were very worried about the writing section because in the previous mock test video, I kind of left you hanging that we did get 65 in writing. This time without technical difficulties and with a format that's even more simplistic in the writing section. So less format itself and more of the words that you're adding by yourself. It really makes a difference. So as you can see, the overall score is 90 as well. It's always weird how they calculate it because sometimes you can get like 90, 90, 90, 82. But the overall score would still be 90. So still a little bit weird from PTE, but who cares? I hope this was useful. I hope this helps you in your preparation. You may want to rewatch this video and try to do these questions at the same time. And as always, I never ask you to buy anything, but if you are preparing for the PTE exam and you need help of any sort, whether you want to use our platform, whether you want to use our practice portal, or whether you need a couple classes just to get up to speed to make sure you're ready for the exam, as always, you can find our contact information below the video and in the comments. Feel free to reach out. I hope this is helpful. I'm wishing you best of luck in your exam, and it always warms up my heart when I see successful results, when you guys pass your test and you let me know that, hey, this video was helpful, or this particular question really helped me out because I was really struggling with it. So I read them all myself. I reply to most of them. It means the world to me. Make sure to subscribe to our page and to subscribe to our newsletter on our website to make sure that you're the first one to be notified when we release new videos, new materials, new tips, tricks, and shortcuts. This is Alex. Until next time, wishing you best of luck. See ya.